So as you guys all know, this 435i is really becoming something more than just your average full bolt-on 435i. So today's video is something that I personally think that every person should have in their BMW. This here is a P3 gauge. You can still read through things like via MHD, boot mod, whatever you choose to do. But I don't want to have to plug in a Wi-Fi adapter to MHD to then see all of my data. I want to just have it right here. So essentially this thing goes in the vent, you can see it real time, and it's really, really cool. Supposedly this is very much plug and play. You do have to do a little bit of wiring, like taking out the OBD2 port connector. I don't know how exactly you're supposed to do all this, so bear with me. This is the thing with wiring, you don't want to mess up, right? So here what I want to show you is this is the tubing in which you are going to be connecting probably to the manifold map sensor. So firstly, if you don't already have this, get a plastic trim tool to get the vent out. It is the simplest way. As a matter of fact, if you have enough gap between the dashboard and everything, you might be able to just pry it out with your fingers. So as you get the vent out, this is where you start to actually dismantle the vent. Now be aware when you are dismantling the vent part where it's the fins, just be careful to not lose any of the parts and just kind of remember how they went. Otherwise, your first time taking this out and putting it all together is going to be an absolute nightmare. So to get these little vent strips out, there are these tabs that are on the side where there's little holes. Just push them out with a screwdriver and they should pop themselves out. Now listen to this very carefully. There are two types of P3 gauges for these cars. One is called the P3 analog gauge, and the other one is called the P3 OBD2 gauge. The analog gauge is very specific for targeting very specific numbers, such as if you were looking for boost only, coolant, oil, whichever, so it's meant for an actual track or race car. Versus the ones that we want from this video are the P3 gauge OBD2 gauge sensor. So it is more expensive, but it's the one that shows all of the values. Now to save you guys some time, I accidentally bought the P3 analog gauge. So at this point, I was super confused as to why I was only able to see certain things. So I ended up having to return this, take it all out, and even unhardwire or unsplice the cables, which is doable, and then buy the correct P3 gauge for the hardwire to the OBD2 sensor. Guys, we have it. So that is the new and the actual P3 gauge that is correct for what my purpose is. Now, again, to reinstate this, the old one that I got was an analog gauge, and that one is specifically for track only cars, like to the point where you were only wanting individual sensors to be there, versus this one, and we could do a little unboxing here because I don't mind that. You know, who doesn't love a little unboxing? Firstly, you do have to order this separately. This is the OBD2 port hardwire. So what this has in it is the ground, power, can high, and can low. You might be asking yourself, what's the point of that? Well, I'm glad you asked. So the ground and power is the one that I already spliced into and it worked. But in order to actually read data, you have to tap into the CAN bus system. That's where I was struggling because I didn't have that hardwire, and even if I did have that hardwire for the other one, it wouldn't have worked because it's not what it was for. So this one is the control box. So it's a lot different. Now the P3 gauge itself, like the screen, isn't gonna change. They really wrapped this up. So you have your screen, and then you have the long cable that has to go through the vent into the dash, and you're good. Now, something else. These are very important too, because what you have here is essentially another wire that controls some data, but then you also you can do a hardwire OBD2 port. Like I said, I still want to use my OBD2 port just for other various codes that I have to go through, so I am still going to keep it, it's just I'm not going to use it. But other than that, that's pretty much about it. Now, great thing is, this actually shows a BMW. Not some sort of Volkswagen or something. So this is literally the definition of plug and play. The display hooks right into the control box, which then hooks into the main harness, which then can either be hooked into the OBD2 harness or be hardwired into the OEM OBD2 harness of the car. This is what we wanted. boost vacuum, air fuel ratio, blah, 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 like a whole bunch of other different things. And I am right back where I started. The OBD2 port is out and hanging. I gotta take away that wrap, which is the tape, and then be very careful around the splices that I already did. I'm probably gonna end up splicing it a little bit higher up. A little bit more difficult, but I've already spliced it. That's the one drawback of splicing. You kind of have to figure out where you're gonna be splicing everything. Now, on top of that, I got to take out the vent here, or vent fans, fins, flaps, and put this guy in. Okay, so you guys already know, control box to this little analog keeper thing, I guess. I'm not 100% sure what this is supposed to be for, except for maybe if you're trying to do a manual boost log, so that boost gauge. So it's basically the same thing as what I had before, it's just more street use for them. So you have your ground, your power, and then your cameras high and low. Oh man, the only struggle that's gonna happen is these 4 things will have to be put in. So again, I think the absolute best way to do this is actually to put this guy in first, because then what I have to do is basically everything that's inside the dashboard. This will plug into the control box just like this, just snaps in, and at that point I can bring this down the avenue of what the OBD2 sensor was at. So let's do this again. And with every BMW modification, the second time is always the easiest because you know exactly how everything should go. So it didn't take me nearly as long, but now that I am putting this guy back into the vents, let me just say, again, a lot less of a struggle. I'm very sorry guys, but this is probably gonna be the worst angle you've ever seen, ever. Now it's go time. This we'll need to cover in just a second so that way it can get pressed in. I honestly don't even know how you take out this side panel. I'm just kind of doing it how I can, not fighting with it too much. But let's see. I hate that this thing has been coiled up, so it's like really getting caught with everything. All the wires that are behind here. So again, control box with this thing, it's gonna just get plugged in now. And I'm gonna have to feed it through a hole that I won't be able to capture on camera. So I'm just gonna go ahead and tuck this in here. Not even really nice, I'm just gonna tuck it in and somehow fish everything through. Oh my God, I got it. That's crazy. Oh, I got the most important one actually, so that's all that really matters. Alright, so this is probably the most challenging part of this entire modification, is the splicing, which I know it doesn't look that bad, but trust me, to get in such a small place with many wires that you really don't want to damage, or at least very slightly damage at the most, it's a little challenging. So just make sure you follow the diagram of what the P3 gauge has listed with the ground, power, can high, and can low. After that, it's pretty self-explanatory and you should be good to go. I will say it does get a little bit tricky to implement the more hard wires you actually put in, like the splices. Those aren't the same ones that I used beforehand, because this one actually had a stopper to it, which is good and bad. It just means that you're gonna have longer wires, which isn't always the bad thing, because if you do screw up, then you can always go back. But problem is, the more you splice the actual OBD2 port, then you're risking some stuff. So it's not the most pleasurable thing, but I mean, really anybody can do this. It's just the biggest thing to know is counting which ones are which. So if you want to be normal, just take out the weather stripping, take out this little panel. I'm sure it's somewhat easy to get back in. I haven't tried it yet, but I do kind of fear that if I don't coil this up behind something, especially the box, when you move around, you're going to be hearing it. And conveniently, there is a little hole bracket that is actually behind this panel here that I took out, that you have to take out with the weather stripping. It's a perfect design for this box to be held in. So just get some zip ties, it works perfectly fine, and you will never hear it. Okay, so I buttoned up everything. I can't actually show you guys it in action right now just because there's a huge thunderstorm and it's raining and it's dark. Well, the darkness doesn't really count, but it's raining, and I don't want to do that anymore. So here we go. And 3, 2, 1. Even just turning on the ignition, it should work. I don't have my keys. Okay, in 3, 2, 1. Well, it's not the greatest sign because it's not on. Maybe just turn it on. Yep. So just make sure when you're hardwiring this, you're splicing correctly. Well, now I have to see if something got unplugged. So off camera, like 2 minutes later, I figured out why, and I went back to the connection because obviously it wasn't turning on. So I was thinking, well, the power cable must have not gotten spliced correctly, or the ground cable, or whichever. Well, I was correct. The ground cable was actually not spliced together. It was pinched, but it wasn't spliced. So now that it is, I'm gonna show you guys this. This is very, very cool. How sick. So this is, I think, coolant temp right now. You can do speed. Go through a whole entire menu, see oil. I don't know what that one was. Throttle response. Air to fuel ratio here, or sorry, air temperature is actually 73 degrees. Air 2, oh, so maybe that's the air that's going into the engine. 0 to 60, the boost. I probably won't have much. So the real question is it worth it? I mean, here's the thing, unless you're gonna go big boost, then it's not. This piece here, okay, the screen, the control box, everything was almost $500. $500. Yes, you get live data reading, and you can still use your OBD2 port, but for $500, think about what you could do with it. You could get a new low pressure fuel pump pretty much. You can put it aside to get maybe carbon fiber parts that actually look really cool. I mean, you could do a bunch of stuff with $500. So, you know, I'm going all out with this car, and I obviously will be going big boost, but $500. Ladies and gentlemen, for that. I mean, I'm happy with it. I'm very glad that I have it. But yeah, I mean, think about it. What would you do? Tell me in the comments down below. Would you buy this? Would you not buy it? I know a lot of people who are running 600 plus horsepower and they don't have it. This is more like a cosmetic mod, but to give live data. So it does help the driver out to the best of its ability. Okay, so it's been about a week's worth of having this thing in, and pros and cons. I actually think that my car does not like electronics. So we all know that I have problems with the Xtrons. I have problems with the digital cluster. I have problems with my rain light. I have problems with my now P3 Gauge cluster. I want to firstly say this, shout out to P3 Gauge themselves, because their customer service is fucking phenomenal. I've been on emails with them left and right for the past week because this thing actually decided to stop working. So 24 hours after I successfully installed it, it was working, and then it decided to not. What I mean by this is that it would turn on for 10 seconds and then cut itself off in connection. And you could see that I was trying to connect. So they sent me an email for a hard reset, and I hard reset it, and it worked for only about a day. And I still have that, so I can still always do it. It's not a bad thing to hard reset anything, because it's the same thing with my phone, right? Like, I hard reset it all the time, just because, technology is technology. Like, I highly recommend still. It's a freaking phenomenal piece of machinery, and it's great for the drivers who really care about their cars and want to know the values that are being produced when they're daily driving the car. I just don't think my car likes it. I've tried the OBD2 port way too, like basically unhooking the wired harness and putting in the OBD2 harness, and it still does the exact same thing. I think more or less what's actually happening is that there's so many electronics happening now that this car is going haywire, which that's the total possibility, because when you have so many electronic components in the car that are not supposed to be in the car, you tend to overload some circuits, or you tend to overload some fuses, and everything just gets messed up. For instance, when I open it, it ain't working. Freaking sucks. Could it be a wire that's burnt again? Yeah, absolutely, it could. But I don't think it is, because if it was that, I would have seen a wire or something, but I'm pretty sure I tucked it in pretty well this time. Anyways, it just sucks, man. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Still more stuff coming for this car before a big move, and yeah, dude, it's just a never-ending fight.